Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, where today we're going to get into our fifth and final news story of the week to round out our story schedule. That being Dragon Ball World's Strongest, What If Wonder Woman Was in Dragon Ball? This is our second anime crossover DC Comics story, where we take the character of Wonder Woman, Diana of Troy, and we place her in the world of Dragon Ball Z. Now, the primary reason for this crossover is mainly because I feel the character of Wonder Woman in terms of her power, setting her in an area where I think she could have the most potential of any sort of character. I would say Dragon Ball would be a good place for her to test her skills. After all, we know that Wonder Woman comes from a world where her power can be ranked amongst the gods, and since we know where the story of Dragon Ball eventually goes, this is a place that would be right up her alley. So all in all, this is a good crossover between a anime and a DC storyline. Also, in terms of which version of Wonder Woman I'm going to be using, it's actually a combination of two. We're using the Wonder Woman from the Justice League animated series along with the Wonder Woman from the modern DCEU movie events. The main reason is that I feel the continuity between these two Wonder Womans would work perfectly in balancing and creating my own version. Now, there will be some key differences. After all, this is a world where only Wonder Woman and her mythos will exist all in all throughout the story, so there won't really be a reason to include too much of anything else on the outside, although I will probably take some considerations going forward. But other than that though, I do hope you will enjoy this new series to the channel, as this is also my first Dragon Ball What If, so this is a pretty daunting task considering how long and how big the story of Dragon Ball is, but it's something that I'm looking forward to. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. For our story, we have to start with the beginning, how the Amazonians of this world came to be. If you are familiar with the mythology of the Amazons from Greek mythology, you would know that they came as a creation from the god Aphrodite, from the gods of Olympus. She created these female warriors out of clay, breathing life into them. She also made for them an island known as Paradise, or as it would soon come to be known as, the island of Themyscira. This was a secure world for the Amazonians, a place where the female creations could live in peace, away from the world of man. Now, in this universe, the Olympic gods do not exist. However, there are gods of a different kind, gods that can create life. One of them being known as the West Kai. This story would begin about 3,000 years before the start of Dragon Ball, when the West Kai had come to Earth. Even during these days, in man's primitive years, war and conflict reigned all across the planet. The West Kai looking to try to find some form of sanctuary, and being a Kai that was known for creating life, this Kai would be responsible for creating Themyscira. Now, even though this was not the West Kai sector, she had come through to pay a visit, and this was her gift in a way to the eastern section of the universe. As such, the West Kai would be responsible for the creation of the Amazons, as she would be the one to create Themyscira. The Amazonians would be blessed with a beautiful island with natural water, plenty of fresh food and other vegetation, and other animal life. In fact, this island has special property amongst many others. That being that as long as the Amazonians stayed on the island, then they would always have eternal life. Not in the sense that their lives were necessarily immortal, they would still have to eat and do other things, but at the very least in terms of natural life, they would never grow up to a certain point, nor would they truly age. Also, if any Amazonian was to die, then they would have a chance for a beautiful afterlife in the next world. As such, the Amazonians would spend their lives living on Themyscira, far off from the rest of the world. However, there was an evil that almost brought this world to an end. It was a being by the name of King Piccolo, whose darkness and tyranny reigned over the earth, and his effects reached far out, even to Themyscira. King Piccolo decimated many of the forces of the Amazonians. For the many thousands that had lived there, their numbers had been reduced greatly. In fact, there was only but a small amount of Amazonians who remained, enough to have a small civilization. King Piccolo would eventually be defeated. However, it would be through the combined efforts of two individuals. One who was known through the world, a young and renowned martial artist, Muten Roshi, along with help from an unexpected source. She would be a young Amazonian in her own right. Her name, Hippolyta. She had become the leader of the Amazons. Both Hippolyta as well as Master Roshi. The two would fight against the demon King Piccolo. However, ultimately, it would be through the sacrifice of Master Roshi's own master, who would seal the demon away in the Mafuba, thus saving humanity. Of course, Themyscira, for the most part, wanted to keep their civilization a secret, and thus only a brief few of them truly knew of its existence to the outside world. Because of this, things in the Dragon Ball universe would remain the same for the most part. Not much would change in terms of the overall story. However, the leader of the Amazons, Hippolyta, would experience a terrible nightmare, a dream. It was a dream of a being of pure darkness, of an evil entity, one of whom would bring the world back into ruin. At first, she couldn't believe if it had even been possible, the idea that the Demon King Piccolo could potentially return. Of course, she hadn't spoken to anyone on the outside in so long that there was no true way of knowing. But of course, in the end of the day, one could never be too careful. Around this time, though, Hippolyta had a daughter by the name of Tien. Tien had grown into a fine young woman who was trained in the arts of the Amazonian warriors. Her power level around this time, if you want to call it that, was of decent size. Of course, while there were many Amazonians who could grow to be powerful in their own right, it was only Hippolyta who was the strongest out of all of them, with a power level of around 230. However, even for her state of power, her daughter wasn't too far behind. Even your strongest or your most average of warrior had a power level of at least 160, which was not something to be taken lightly at all. However, Tien was pushing into a league of her own. You could roughly estimate that even for the age, she was closing in at around 170. At 14 years of age, Tien had definitely become a force to be reckoned with. However, there was one thing though about Tien that made her different from most other Amazons. That being the fact that she had never been able to explore the outside world, and her curiosity was greater than anyone else's that they had ever seen. Of course, time and time again, she had been told why they did not go to the outside world, and why they kept to themselves. But all the same, to have such a big and beautiful planet, and to never journey out on your own, well, that was just something that Tien couldn't quite figure out, nor could she fully understand. Of course, her mother would always try to quench her thirst for knowledge and things of that nature. After all, it would be a little hypocritical for her to say that she never journeyed out. But at the same time, the Amazonians mainly wanted to keep to themselves. It wasn't really a big deal for them to want to go to the outside world. Ultimately though, her mother, fearing about the dreams she had been having recently, and now even more so for the safety of her daughter, she decided to give her a mission. It would be brief, if you will. She would allow her daughter to fly about the earth and to see whatever it was that she could see. However, she was to promise that she would not get into any trouble, and she was to make sure that she would return home within 1 month's time. Tien was excited for her journey and for her adventure. As she was equipped for her travels, she would be given a satchel with food, rations, and water and things of that nature. Although with her hunting skills, she was able to fend for herself in nature naturally, and also she had the ability to fly. Carrying with her her sword and her lasso, known as the Lasso of Truth, Tien would don her new uniform before heading out. It was one that her mother had made for her, one with pride. This would be the classic and original Wonder Woman hero costume, or the one seen from the Justice League Unlimited series. Tien would wave goodbye to the Amazonians as she flew and set off, as her new journey was about to begin. It took some time, as the island of Themyscira was far off from any mainland. It took a while as she flew over the many waters, but seeing the vast creatures of the sea, it only inspired her even more. To see all of these wonderful and amazing things she never thought she would get a chance to experience. As she continued flying about though, there were a few things though that troubled her. For one, the closer she got to the islands, the closer she got to the other mainlands where other humans and mankind and civilization exist, she could feel a strange sensation. One of malice. You see, living on the island of Themyscira, there was a sense of tranquility, a sense of peace. This was like a natural aura, if you will. Kind of like something you would sense when you're in somewhere that you know isn't safe. The closer she got, the more she felt it grow stronger and stronger. Eventually though, she would reach the mainlands. As she arrived, she would eventually settle down to walking on the land itself. The grass, the trees, the nature, it didn't seem all that different from her island. Of course, there seemed to be a lack, if you will, between the two. Sure, the colors of the grass was green on both sides, but the grass of the Isle of Man, it felt a bit darker, like a sense of life wasn't in it. For all the newness and the wonder that she felt, there was still a strange sense of dread. Of course though, she didn't let this get to her all that much. as she continued on in her travels. As she continued about, there was one moment though that would change her, as she would come across one creature that was definitely not on Themyscira, that being a large Tyrannosaurus. Its very size, its very being was far beyond any of her comprehension. Tien would attempt to move out of the way of the attack of the dinosaur as it started to chase after her. Tien flying away as the beast continued its pursuits, looking for its next meal. Of course though, once Tien had stopped for a moment to remember, she knew that she had proper training, and that this wasn't something she should fear. As she turned back around, the beast opening its jaws and attempting to bite down upon her, Tien would hold out her hands, catching the mouth of the beast, holding it upwards and keeping it from chomping on her. It was definitely a test of her strength, but one that she was actually looking forward to. As she held the jaws of the beast open, she would actually push back against it. She was actually really invigorated. This was new, definitely. It was daunting to say the least, but at the same time, it felt a little fun. As she landed back down on the ground and the beast was preparing to stand back up, she would yell to it to go away and that she was giving it a chance to leave with its life, believing that she was giving the beast a fair warning. However, a dinosaur was definitely not going to take it, as it stood back up once again, roaring out in anger as it was preparing for yet another charge. As Tien stood at the ready, preparing to draw her sword, she would hear screaming coming out in the distance, as from out of nowhere, a young man, a little shorter than her, dressed in orange and blue, with his hair poking everywhere and a tail, would come flying from out of the forest nearby. He seemed to be riding on a cloud. As he went flying, the boy would pull out a pole from his back as he used it and threw it at the mouth of the dinosaur, its mouth being unable to bear down and clench as the young man would yell, "Kame! Hame! Ha!" In a blue beam, the dinosaur would find itself being eviscerated. In the midst of the smoke and the debris, Tien would be absolutely shocked at what she had seen. She didn't think that man could be capable of doing something like this. This must have been why they were so wary about coming here, if they had that type of power. The young man landed on the ground though, catching his breath as he retracted his pole and put it back on his back, as he looked over to her and waved. "Hey, are you okay?" Yes, I'm fine, thank you. How did you do that?" "Oh, the Kamehameha wave? I was taught it by my master." "Your master?" "Mm-hmm. Master Roshi. He's the one that taught me how to fight. Well, I also learned from my grandpa, but he's not around anymore." "Wait, did you say Master Roshi?" "Yeah, Master Roshi. He's my master." "I've heard of that name. Is he known as Muton Roshi?" Can't really say I've ever asked before, but his last name is Roshi." "Roshi. That sounds like the person my mother knew. But it couldn't possibly be. Can you take me to your master?" Maybe, but I'm a little busy right now." "Busy? What are you busy with?" "Oh, I'm actually on my way right now. I'm going to the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament." "Martial arts?" "Yeah, it's like a fight, fighting. Fighting? You fight in tournaments? Of course, Diane was aware of the tournaments. After all, they had them on her island, like games and things of that nature. And sometimes there was combat tournaments. She was surprised to see that the differences between man and the Amazons wasn't all that different. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I competed a couple years ago, although I didn't win. But I've been training really hard, and right now, I'm looking to give it my all this time around. I see. Do you think your master would be there? I believe so. Well, I hope he is. I didn't get a chance to see him last time till after it was over. But everyone that I know is going to be there. Do you want to come? Sure. Ooh, but first, I really want to eat because I've been kind of hungry. Oh, I don't have much, but I have some food you can have. Oh, that's fine. My dinner's right over there. As Goku pointed at the dinosaur. You're gonna eat that? Yeah, why not? It's good food. But it's so... I like dinosaur, especially the thigh meat. It's really tender and juicy. Diane couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had never seen a creature like this before, a dinosaur. And even more so, the idea that you would actually eat that thing. But she was taught always to be respectful of others, so she waited patiently as Goku would get a fire roaring, and he would, with some help from Diane using her sword, would start to cut up the meat. And this was where Diane learned something that would be very helpful down the road. While she didn't know it at the time, whatever Goku was, or wherever he came from, they sure liked to eat. You wouldn't have known this was a dinosaur by the time Goku was finished, as there was nothing left but bone. Diane had her mouth only left wide open. How on earth had he been able to eat that much meat? Where did it all go? As Goku plopped down on the grass with his belly now full, sighing in relief now as that was a rather enjoyable meal, even if it was a little on the charred side. Man, that was great! Did you like it too? What do I call you? I'm Diana of Troy. And you are? Oh, I'm Son Goku, but you can just call me Goku. I see. And I've been wanting to ask, but are you a god? A god? What makes you think that? You ride on clouds. Ride on clouds? Oh, you're talking about Nimbus? Yeah, he was a gift from my master. He's a Nimbus cloud. We can ride those, you know. You can? Well, yeah, as long as you're pure of heart. I remember that Krillin and Bulma couldn't fly on it for some reason, and neither could Roshi. Roshi couldn't fly on it? This caught Diane by surprise. From what she had heard from her mother, Roshi was a noble warrior. So, how would he not be able to ride on something like this? Was he really not pure of heart? Oh, little did she know. There was a lot that her mother didn't tell her about Roshi, and for good reason. While he might have been a noble warrior and a good fighter, he was a perv. And in her younger years, when her and a young Roshi met, he had a tendency to put his hands in places where he shouldn't. And if we're being honest, she'd be lying if she said she didn't enjoy it from time to time. But that's a story for a different day. All the same though, Diane did enjoy the dinosaur meat, although it was a little bit too tough for her, although it was different and new. As they had finished eating, Goku would explain a little bit more about the World Martial Arts Tournament, about how there was a prelim and how everything had to be set up beforehand. He had also told her about his journeys to collect the Dragon Balls and things of that nature. This was something else that Diane had heard about in rumor on the Amazon island. The story of a mystical dragon, a being that could grant the desires of anyone who collected 7 orbs. Of course, she had always thought it were fantasy, but even so, to see now that it were actually true and that this boy knew something of it, well, it only made her more and more excited about the world she had gone to. And this would only give her more and more of stories to tell to her people when she eventually returned. Goku pointed out that if she wanted to, she could come compete. The tournament was open to anyone, men and women. Diane wondered if this was something that she should do. After all, it had been a while since she had competed in any kind of tournament, and this sounded like it could be a lot of fun. Plus, she didn't really feel like she got a chance to test her skills all that much. Sure, on the island there were many powerful warriors for her to fight against, but she had pretty much beaten them all by this point. The only one that she couldn't beat was her own mother. That was the one hurdle she hadn't overcome. But even still, she thought that she might be able to beat her in time. Taking him up on the offer, Goku would make room on the Nimbus Cloud, asking for Diane to come with her. Diane would pause for a moment, being a bit nervous, hoping that she would be worthy enough to fly on such a thing, but Goku patted it, asking that there was plenty of room, and he believed she was. She would cautiously sit on the cloud, and surprisingly enough, she didn't fall through. Together, the two of them would fly off and head to the site of the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament. As they arrived, they would go to the check-in station, where Goku would help explain to Diane how they would be able to enter into the tournament, and how they would have to fight in these little prelim rounds before they would go to the main event. As she arrived though, Diane would remember from her mother to try to make sure she kept her identity undercover. Of course, Diane trusted this Goku well enough, but at the same time, she didn't want everyone knowing who she was. So she had to come up with an idea. What name could she give herself? Power Star? Great Fighter? No. She looked around, trying to come up with a name. She saw something that said, Wonder Care Hair Products. Wonder. Wonder sounded good. She liked the name Wonder. She looked around some more, and then she saw the sign for woman. It was the woman's bathroom, but she was a woman. Well, more of a girl, but she was a young woman. A wonderful woman. Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman. Yeah, she'll go by Wonder Woman. She put her name down as Wonder Woman. Goku wondered why she didn't just use her regular name, but then again, she would explain to him that she didn't want everyone to know that who she actually was, and that this was like a little cover name. Goku just nodded in understanding, although he didn't quite get it. As he arrived though, he would meet some of his old friends, that being in Yamcha, as well as Krillin. Hey Goku, you made it! Hey there, man, Yamcha would say. Yamcha, Krillin, it's good to see you. Guys, this is my friend, should I call you? Diane would nod. This is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman? I've never heard of a name like that. Oh. Yamcha would be a little nervous seeing a girl that cute, and Krillin's jaw would absolutely hit the floor as he ran up to Goku. Goku? Come on, why do you always get to hog all the good ones? First Chi-Chi, now this? Chi-Chi? Diane would say as she nodded her head slightly. Who's Chi-Chi? Chi-Chi. She's this girl that has this thing for Goku. She has a thing for me? A thing? Diane would say. I don't know. She said something about marriage. I don't know what it is, but I hope it tastes good. Marriage. Uh, Goku, Diane would say as she waved him over. Goku, you've never heard of marriage? No, not really. I mean, it's not a concept that we do where I'm from, but we are aware of the concept, though. You don't know what marriage is? No. What's it taste like? I've never had it before. Goku, marriage is when a boy and a girl, they live together forever. What? There's no food? No. Well, yes, but no. Honestly, that was a hard question to answer. But I just thought it was something to eat. I don't really want that. You don't? No, I mean, Chi-Chi's fun and all, but I don't really think I want to live with her. I see. Well, the next time you see her, you should try to explain that to her. I don't think she would appreciate being led on that way. Goku would nod, now gaining a bit more understanding about the matter. He had to try to fix things over with her whenever he got the chance. But other than that though, the prelims would soon begin. While Diane wanted to find where Master Roshi was, he was seemingly nowhere to be found, although Krillin could have sworn he was here. But there was someone else, a familiar face, and the winner of the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. His name being Jackie Chun. Jackie Chun would arrive as he saw Goku and Krillin, happy to meet them once again. After all, when he won the tournament the year prior, he had defeated them in combat, defeating both Goku as well as Krillin to make it to the finals and be declared the victor. Along the way, they also ran into Tien Shinhan, as well as his partner, Chaozu. Tien had made it very clear he was going to get vengeance for his master in Mercenary Tao, and for the Crane School. Of course though, Jackie Chun knew all too well the problems of revenge. But even still, what really caught him off guard was seeing Diane. While many wouldn't have recognized it from her attire, he could tell all too well that she was not from this world. My, Roshi would think in his mind. I can't believe an Amazonian girl has actually came all the way out here. They never leave that place. I wonder how Hippolyta is doing. Diane would express her sadness at not being able to find Master Roshi. However, Jackie Chun would explain that Roshi was going to be nearby and that they might find him after the tournament was over. Besides, if they wanted to, this would be a good chance for them to try out and test their new skills. Of course, that was going to be if they could make it to the finals. And Diane was a bit more intrigued. Goku would have to warn her though that she wasn't allowed to use weapons in the tournament. Of course, Diane would be surprised by this, but in the end it sounded understandable, and at least they weren't fighting to the death or anything like that. It was weird. For all she had heard about the savagery of mankind, they didn't seem to be anywhere nearly as harmful as she thought they'd be. The tournament would be set up based on the 8 winners from the preliminary, and thankfully enough, no one was fighting in the same preliminary match. Diane actually getting a chance to show what she was capable of. As Goku, Krillin, and the others watching on, they were able to see that she was far more capable than they'd given her credit, as she was actually able to sweep through many of her opponents. Before long, the 8 had been decided. Goku, Diane, Krillin, Jackie Chun, Yamcha, Tien, Chaozu, and Man Wolf. They were going to be the 8 participants going into the finals. And the bracket would be set up, although this time it would be a little different than it was before. On one half, you had 4 participants. Krillin would still face Chaozu, and Goku would face Man Wolf. However, on the other side was where things had been shaping up differently, in the sense that Tien was going to be facing Jackie Chun in the first round, and Yamcha was going to be facing Wonder Woman. From here, the story would play out almost the same. The fight between Goku and Man Wolf would result in Goku's victory, and Krillin would still beat Chaozu. As for Jackie Chun and Tien, their fight would be similar to what it was in the semifinals, only this time a lot more intense, since they would be fighting right off the bat. Jackie Chun, which was Master Roshi in disguise, was taking it upon himself to try to instill a new sense of right and wrong into Tien, to teach him that the ways of his school, the way of aggressiveness and of anger, that was not the right way, but that instead it would only be by learning how to fight for one's own beliefs and to fight for what was right that would allow for one to achieve their own heights and, in their own way, become their own man. Of course, Tien was still brash and haughty, and was not someone who would dissuade his ideology so easily. He and Jackie Chun gave it all in their battle, even more so than in the original timeline, the two of them fighting their heart's content. Ultimately though, Tien, being the younger and stronger of the two, would get the better of Jackie Chun in a few of their exchanges. Eventually though, Jackie would decide to bow out of the arena, hopping off of the platform and onto the ground, and submitting in defeat, although the fight had definitely taken more out of the two than it had originally. And in the final round, there was Yamcha versus Wonder Woman. Of course, Yamcha was still very shy about being around girls, and Diane didn't quite understand it completely, but at the same time, she wasn't someone who was looking to hold back or to be treated differently. In the midst of Yamcha's stammering and confusions, Diane would appear in front of him and just punch him in the face, knocking him to the ground. As Yamcha got back on his feet now, feeling that he had been hurt in more ways than one, he realized this girl was not someone to be taken lightly. The two of them engaged in a flurry of combat, Yamcha looking to try to keep Diane on her toes, and Diane surprised to see someone this ferocious and this capable. As the two of them fought, they seemed just about evenly matched. After all, Yamcha was no weakling by any means, his power being rather respectable in its own way. However, at the same time though, Diane, or Wonder Woman in this case, was not someone who would be taken down so easily, as she matched pace against the young bandit, the two of them competing against one another. It became soon well enough though, that in terms of fighting between the two, Diane was the better practitioner, mainly being in the sense that Diane had been trained since her infancy in the art of combat. In a lot of ways, she was a lot like Goku. It wasn't that Yamcha was a bad fighter, this was just a matter of Yamcha being matched up against someone who just had more experience and the power to help that experience. Yamcha would try to go in for the Wolf Fang Fist, and Diane would manage to dodge every one of his strikes. As they reached the edge though, Diane would catch Yamcha's arms before lifting him for an over-the-shoulder throw, slamming him into the ground and onto his back. As he found himself being lifted back up once more, Diane would kick him out of the arena and he would fall to the ground, defeated and eliminated. With that, Diane would advance. Moving on to the semi-finals. The first matchup, Goku versus Krillin, which would play out the same as in the original, with Goku getting the better of his friend and eventually making it to the finals. As Goku had, though, they waited for the other semi-final match to take place, that being between Wonder Woman, or Diana of Troy, and against Tien Shinhan. As the two of them sized each other up, Tien would explain that he wasn't going to be taking it easy on any of Goku's allies. Diana would explain that she had only just met him recently, but in Tien's mind, it really didn't matter. The two of them would size each other up as the fight would begin. This would be unlike anything the crowd had ever seen. The young girl was holding her own against Tien Shinhan rather nicely, even when he tried to use a few of his key attacks, including the Dundam Po Ray. He would be surprised as Diane would use her bracelets to dodge and block every one of the attacks that came at him, especially the beam that was blasted towards her. You see, while you could say that the Amazonians were able to use their ki, they didn't use it the same way that other fighters in the world did. They didn't develop their own kind of ki blast or anything of that nature. Instead, they used their ki to fly or to increase their overall strength. This aided them when it came to their martial arts or when it came to their combat training. But outside of that, they didn't do any sort of blast or those type of things. However, Diane was still adept enough to be able to block and to dodge many of the attacks that came her way, angering Tien. Also on top of that, unlike her, Tien had fought a much more grueling match in the first round against Jackie Chun. As such, he wouldn't be in a top tip 100%. Even going up against Goku in the original timeline, he didn't fight Jackie Chun until the semifinals, and Jackie Chun gave up a lot sooner than he did in the original. However, now, this time around, Tien was fighting against someone who was definitely on his level. If Tien Shinhan's power level was a 180 and Diane's was a 170, while Tien may have had the advantage by a number of 10, Diane was easily able to make up for it in terms of her combat ability and her prowess. But more so than that, it was also the fact that unlike her, Tien had fought a much more grueling match from the start. As they continued to fight though, Diane would try to understand him a little more. She asked why he hated Goku so much. What had he done to him? He explained that Goku had been the one responsible for killing his master. This would shock Tien, as Goku didn't come off as a killer in any way, and she couldn't believe that he would do something like that. Of course, Tien was admitting more of the truth than even he would have known himself, mainly being the fact that his master, Mercenary Tao, had only come to his end by his own foolishness, and it was through his own cheating and cunning that had resulted in his undoing to begin with. However, Diane couldn't focus on that right now. She wanted to win no matter what. Tien was running low on energy, and the battle was coming to its end. Tien, in his desperation, would attempt to use his multi-arm technique, hoping to bind and hold her in place before trying to drag her out of the arena. He would also use his doppelganger technique, creating a second version of himself to try to catch Tien off guard. As he did so, the clone of Tien would jump behind her with his multi-arms, grabbing and holding her in place, while Tien would raise up his fist to use the Dodon Ray, hoping that he could blast the two of them out of the arena and get the victory. However, the one downside of this technique, the multiform, is that it cut the user's power in half, and Tien didn't have much of it to begin with. This was a cheeky trick trying to catch her off guard. However, Diane wouldn't fall for it. Using her strength, she would dig her heels into the ground itself, making her immovable. As she had done so, she would focus all of her strength on breaking free of his wrist control, snapping herself free from the clone and knocking it back, causing it to dissipate. Being shocked by this, Tien would put all of his strength into the Dodon Ray, firing it right at her. However, in her signature form, Wonder Woman would cross both of her arms together as the attack would clash with her bracelets. As she focused the beam, she would angle it to fly right back at him, blasting him in the face and stunning him, long enough for her to dash forward and, with a signature punch, knock him clean out of the ring. And with that, Wonder Woman would get the win, and after a brief intermission, she would advance to the next round, the finals, to face against Son Goku. As the interlude was taking place, as they were getting ready for the finals, Goku would run up to Diane, as he wanted to congratulate her on getting so far in her first try. However, she would hold up her hand, stopping him. Goku, I have something to ask you, and I need you to be honest with me. That man that I fought, he said you killed his master. Is that true? What? Oh, yeah, I didn't kill him necessarily. We were fighting and he tried to use a bomb on me. I just kicked it back towards him. I didn't think it would harm him that way. You didn't kill him? No, sweetie, he didn't. From out of the corner, Master Roshi would suddenly appear. He looked as though he were winded, as if he had been in a fight. I wonder why. Who are you? Nice to meet you, young lady. My name is Master Roshi. You're the master? The one my mother told me about. Ah, Hippolyta. How is she doing these days? She's doing well. It's so nice to finally meet you. Likewise. What's your name, young one? I know you're calling you Wonder Woman, but that can't be your name. No, I am Diana of Troy. I used it as a cover name since Mother didn't want me having my identity known out to the world in full. I see. And so, what exactly are you doing out here in these parts? I know that your people are rather reserved and keep to themselves. That is true. Normally, we don't leave our home, but Mother was giving me this chance to explore, to see the world a bit. It's like an excursion. I see. Wow, I didn't think they'd ever allow something like that. Now, if they could just let the more mature ones out, then we could get something going, Master Roshi would think. But still, Roshi would assure Diane that Goku would never kill, and that wasn't in his nature. He explained the history of the Crane School. Much to their chagrin, Tien Shinhan would be listening close by. He had a lot to think about after his loss, realizing a lot of truths. Even more so, he had gotten to the point where he was wanting to figure things out for himself. But for now, he was just going to wait and watch. With all of that out of the way and all of their misgivings, the finals would now commence. Son Goku versus Diana of Troy. The two of them relatively fresh and ready to go. Goku was excited. This was going to be his opportunity to fight against someone new, someone incredibly powerful. And for Diane, well, She'd be lying if she said she didn't want to see what Goku was capable of. Also, something within Goku, he wasn't entirely sure, but there was a strong emotion being felt towards her. He couldn't quite explain it, but there was this ever-growing feeling, an ever-growing sense that Tien was someone Goku wanted to be around. He wasn't sure why, but maybe it was her power, the way she fought. He wanted to see what she was capable of, and more. As the announcer yelled for the match to begin, Goku and Tien would grin and nod as they both launched towards one another. The both of their fists would collide in the center of the ring, causing shockwaves to reverberate. Goku would begin in a flurry of kicks and punches, Tien being on the defensive. While Goku was someone who could fly around and attack from any position, Tien was like a fortress, fortified, standing firm, someone who couldn't easily be moved, and this was something Goku was noticing. When she dug her feet down and was willing to stand firm, she was like an immovable object. Multiple times Goku tried to attack, from the ground and from the air, from both of her sides and from front to back, but yet each time she was able to counter rather effectively, as Goku would eventually stop to give her credit for how well she was holding up. "Wow, you're pretty good. Yeah, you're not bad yourself. You're almost impossible to move. It's like you're a part of the ground. This is what I've learned from my people. We learned to be fortified and strong, to be immovable, to be unpenetrable in either regard. So if you think you'll move me from my spot so easily, Goku," Tien would give him a grin, "you've got another thing coming." Goku got excited by this, as the two of them would meet once more for another flurry of attack. Eventually, though, Tien would decide to switch from her defense to offense, once she got a good range of how Goku liked to fight. She would sidestep him as he went in for another attack, moving around and grabbing him by the leg as she did a leg sweep and knocked him to the ground, going for a takedown and looking for a submission, locking his arm behind his back as she pressed her knee on his head. "Yield! Not so easily." Goku would use his flexible body to flip over, as he used his tail wrapping it around her wrist, pulling it around as he moved behind her. Still having his tail binding the back of her arm, Goku would use his two free hands to grab her other arm. "You want to give up? Not easily." Tien would instantly flip back, as she used her momentum to dump Goku right on his head down to the concrete. Never say that the Amazonians couldn't be fierce when they wanted to. As they continued on though, the people were in awe of what they were seeing from the young duo. Even though she didn't use any energy attacks, as Krillin was able to take note of, Roshi would explain that the Amazonians didn't use their ki the same way as they did. Their ki was used more so to simply increase their physical strength. Essentially, take the power that would have been used to form a Kamehameha wave. Rather than forming that, they would use that power to just increase their overall strength. They were monsters, powerhouses in their own way. What Goku had in terms of speed, Tien had in power. It was simply a matter of which one was going to cave in first. Also, Tien had another trick though, that Goku did not. And that was the fact that Tien could fly, effortlessly. For Goku, the best thing he could do was use his tail as a propeller, helping him get into the air, to try to meet her. However, this was where things would take its turn. Tien had the advantage because, unlike Goku, she could fly naturally. As a result, It would be much more difficult for Goku to meet her in air combat for too much longer, and she knew this. As she continued to go higher and higher, Goku knew that eventually he wasn't going to be able to meet her, so he had to do the next best thing. He would use the Kamehameha, launching it back to the ground, but just enough to propel him higher into the air until eventually he caught up with her. As the two of them began fighting in the sky, Goku tried to get in as many hits as he could, hoping to knock Tien into the ground. Using the advantage that he had while he was in the air, he would grab her ankle with his tail, before flinging her with all of his might back into the arena floor, as Goku went charging directly after her. As Tien crashed into the stadium below, Goku coming in for another kick, hoping to send her out of the ring. Tien would catch his foot at the last moment and sling him back around, knocking him out of bounds and hoping to get the victory. However, Goku would use his ki to create a small gust of wind, pushing him back forward as the two of them collided once more, continuing on in their flurry of combat. The two of them now having fierce determination etched across both of their faces. Both of them determined to win, and neither one willing to back down for a moment. They continued on in their fight as the sun began to set, and eve was soon beginning to set in for all of them. As they continued on in their battle, it was eventually reaching its ultimate climax. Both combatants were extremely tired, and it seemed as though the fight could go either way. The crowd was roaring and eating up what they were seeing. If they had thought the finals from the last tournament was anything, then they hadn't seen nothing yet. Goku decided he was going to put his all into this next attack. I don't think I have that much left in me. Yeah, I can see. You haven't tried to use that little attack of yours, though. Huh? You know, the one you used to beat that beast. Oh, the Kamehameha. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about using it. Tien would stand at the edge of the arena, as she held both of her arms, crossing her face. So why don't you? What do you want to do? Simple. You stand on the edge, and I stand on the edge. And you try to hit me with everything you got. If you can knock me off, you win. But if I can take it, you won't have anything left. And that'll be your defeat. Oh, so you want to go all out then? Alright. Both Goku and Tien would tell the people behind them respectively to move out of the way, because they knew what was coming next. Both combatants would stand at the opposite ends of the arena, both on the edge. That edge was like the edge of their life, and they were putting everything on the line to win. Roshi tilted his head, knowing this was going to be the end, one way or another. As Goku got into position, he charged all of the ki that he had left to go into a final Kamehameha wave, and Tien was ready to take the hit. Goku would let the beam out as it went surging straight towards her. Tien, using her crossed arms and the power of the bracelets themselves, she would take the power of the attack as it crashed towards her. This was a unique beam struggle, to say the least. More so, this was beam resistance, to see if Tien was strong enough to tank Goku's Kamehameha wave, and for Goku to see if he could put everything he had into taking her out. The crowd would be in awe of what they were watching the young girl's resistance, watching her hold her own in attempts to keep him at bay. Goku continued pressing on the attack, as the beam continued to push towards her, until eventually she was able to push forward, She held out her arms, keeping away the beam. Goku could feel its power beginning to weaken though. He knew that if he didn't put his all into it now, this was going to be his loss. Goku would yell out furiously as he poured his heart and soul into the attack, and for Tien, she could feel herself beginning to slip, slowly being pushed off of the edge. However, she dug her feet into the ground and stood firm, not allowing herself to be moved so idly. She used her strength and her determination to keep going, as she was eventually able to resist well enough. The beam would begin to dissipate, and Tien waited for a moment, waiting for a chance to turn the tide. As she did so, she would launch the beam directly back towards Goku. Goku would have to use his strength now to block his own attack, as he held up his hands idly. Once the beam had dissipated, the crowd looked and watched on, both combatants now standing on the edge of the arena respectively from different sides, as they both breathed in heavily. "Wow," Goku would say. "I didn't think that you could take my full attack. Yeah, it's not too bad. So what now? Honestly, I don't think I can lift my arms. Neither can I. Okay. Well, on 3? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Both combatants would fall back to the ground. There would be attendants watching on both sides as they seemed to be falling simultaneously. If the crowd didn't know any better, they would see it as a double knockout. Many were wondering what was going on. They wondered who exactly had won this encounter. It would be a lot of deliberation for a while. Thankfully, there were a few cameras rolling on both ends to see just who had hit the ground first. They both had fallen from their side, but as they looked closer, as they saw both combatants preparing to hit the ground at the same time, it became very apparent what had happened. Goku, who was shorter than Tien by at least 5 inches, his head cracked onto the ground first before hers. In a matter of inches, Goku had lost, and Tien, aka Wonder Woman, had gained the victory, and was now the winner of the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament. The two combatants would be taken back to the medical firm immediately, the both of them needing a long rest after a hard-fought match. However though, at the same time, there was an overwhelming sense of pride. For Master Roshi, to see another young and promising fighter give it their all was more than he could have ever asked for. And as for Goku, it bummed him that he had lost this time around, but at the same time, he was happy though. Happy that he had gotten a chance to fight and meet an incredible friend. And even for Tien, she had done something she never thought she'd get the chance to do. To go out into the world, to meet more new and incredible people, and to compete in a world's martial arts tournament where she won. If anything, she proved that she might have been the best fighter in the world, well, next to her mother. Although, as they continued to celebrate, Tien eventually getting her winnings and the prize money, Goku would show her a restaurant where they could go and eat. Of course, Tien had never had food outside of her homeland, so to get a chance to try new things would be great for her. And also, Goku learned that Tien could put away some food also when she was really hungry. and after that long and grueling match, the two combatants were starving. As Roshi, Bulma, Yamcha, and the others were watching on, they couldn't help but get this weird sense that they had found another Goku. Well, she wasn't quite like Goku. At least she ate properly and didn't scarf down all of her food, although her plates were stacking up just as much as his. In the midst of it all, though, Goku realized that he had forgotten something of his back at the arena, and Krillin offered to go and get it. But that had been a while ago, and Krillin hadn't gotten back yet. Eventually, though, Goku would decide to go and try to find them, along with Tien following close behind. As they made their way, though, the joy and excitement that they were feeling, well, that would soon dissipate. As they had made their way back to the arena itself, they would see that an attack had taken place. One of the attendants who had arrived would explain that the sheet that contained the list of the 8 fighters from the tournament, it was gone. And as they looked at the ground, they saw the body of a lifeless Krillin. Goku holding him close. And even more so, on top of the list being stolen as well, Goku's 4-star Dragon Ball was also taken away. But who could have done something like this? Who was responsible? Well, the one responsible was a foe long since forgotten. A being that had now entered into the world once again. He remembered greatly how he had been defeated by these martial artists all those years ago. And now, this was something he was going to rectify. The being responsible was none other than the Demon King himself, King Piccolo. And his objective was quite simple. It was time to eliminate the world's strongest fighters. This concludes Dragon Ball World's Strongest. What if Wonder Woman was in Dragon Ball? As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned next week on Monday as we continue Naruto Polaris, What If Hanabi Hyuga Was Born First? Part 2. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.